I run around in my regular clothes in public sometimes just to mess with people. They think, oh my gosh, there must be an emergency. Look at that woman running. Nope, it's just me fucking with your head. What can I say? I am easily amused. Hi, I'm Jessica, and I used to live on Easy Street. I had nice things, and I ate and drank whatever I wanted. But the truth was, I lived paycheck to paycheck at a job I hated. Eating and drinking whatever I wanted made me fat and miserable. I had constant heartburn and hangovers, and I was drowning in debt. Today, I'm fit and happy, and I want the same thing for you. Because it turns out that Easy Street is a dead end. The only way to become your best self is to take the path of most resistance. Hello and welcome back. I'm happy to tell you that my road trip has ended and we can get back to work on the path of most resistance. I have to tell you though, I'm going to be changing the podcast format yet again. I just feel like choosing random challenges isn't really the best way to go. Everyone's at a different place on their own path of most resistance. And sometimes I pick challenges that are too easy for you because you've already gotten that area of your life figured out. And I don't know where you are on your path, but I do know where I am on my path. For example, I'm in the middle of a move to a foreign country, and that definitely has some challenges I can speak to. So each week, I'm going to tell you about a challenge I've either faced in the past or am currently facing, and how I conquered or failed that challenge. On our last episode, I shared with you how I achieved my first goal when I was in the Navy. That really was a life-changing moment for me. I was 21, and I'd never really made a big decision about my life before that. I'd mostly been stumbling along, letting other people decide things for me. But that was the first time I made my own choice about what I wanted. And when I pulled it off, it made me want even more control over my own life. One thing it didn't do, though, was give me control over my health. It would take another 20 years for me to figure that one out. I weighed 225 pounds at my highest point, and I stayed over 200 pounds for way too many years. Now, you may be thinking, but weren't you in the military? Don't people in the military work out all the time and stay extremely fit? Well, some people do, like Paul Johnson, the Navy lieutenant who recently ran 3,000 miles from Los Angeles to New York City to raise money for mental health awareness. But some people don't, and I was one of them. There was only one point in my entire 8 years in the Navy that I worked for an officer who made us work out daily, and that only lasted a couple of weeks before it kind of faded away. In reality, and keep in mind this was 20 years ago, standards may be different now, but in reality back then, all I had to do was pass a physical readiness test twice a year. Touch your toes, do a really small number of push-ups and sit-ups, and then run 1.5 miles. The number of push-ups, sit-ups, and the time to beat for your run were based on your age and your sex. I had like 16 and a half minutes to finish that run to pass the test. At that pace, you can almost walk it and still pass. And if you failed the weigh-in because you were over the limit, someone would measure the size of your neck with a tape measure, and somehow you were almost always miraculously within specs. Can't have people failing the test, it looks bad. So yeah, the whole thing was kind of a joke. I also learned after a few years of this to skip breakfast on the day of the test because I would inevitably hurl after the run. I mean, a whole 1.5 miles of running. Isn't it funny how your perspective can change with time, though? Now when I go for a run, I can't imagine running less than a 5K, or I don't even feel like I've worked out. That's a bit over 3 miles for you who struggle with the metric system. Anyway, when I joined the Navy, I weighed 145 pounds, a reasonable weight since I'm 5'9". When I left the Navy, though, I was already starting to push 200 pounds. 3 square meals a day and not much movement will do that to you. Not that I'm talking shit about the Navy. I think most Americans are nowhere near their high school weight a decade later, whether they join the military or not. It's because we stop moving and sit around eating. I mean, when was the last time you saw an adult running that wasn't out for a jog? Remember when we were kids and we used to dash all over the place for no reason at all? Somewhere along the way, we lost that joy. As a side note, I run around in my regular clothes in public sometimes just to mess with people. They think, oh my gosh, there must be an emergency. Look at that woman running. Nope, it's just me fucking with your head. What can I say? I am easily amused. But no, the Navy did not give me a body that was fit or the methods to maintain it. But hey, that wasn't my fault. I was born to be fat. I mean, look at my dad and my uncles and my grandmother. It was clearly my genetic destiny to be fat. So even though I hated every second of it, I tried to push it out of my mind and accept my fate. I was born into a plus-size family, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I felt pretty dumb when I realized that wasn't true. Honestly, though, when I actually did start losing weight, I wasn't trying to. It happened by accident. I moved to a small town that only had one restaurant. This forced me to eat at home more often, and incredibly, that was all it took. I didn't even know how to cook in the beginning, and I bought things like Hamburger Helper and boxed pasta salad kits, instant grits, steak and salad. Easy stuff, but I was preparing my own meals for the most part. One day, after a few months of this, I bought a scale to weigh myself. I didn't have one before because it only ever gave me bad news, and who wants that? But on this day, when I put the scale down, it said 218 instead of 225. I felt so encouraged that I decided for the first time in my life, I was going to really try to lose weight. Not do some fad diet, really make an effort to change my lifestyle. Because I worked in another town, I would often swing through a fast food joint on the way home and scarf a cheeseburger in my car so my husband wouldn't know. I mean, I wasn't hiding things from him. I would have admitted it if he saw me, but he didn't see me, so I didn't have to admit it. But once I made the decision to try something different, everything changed. I found a free calorie tracking app called MyFitnessPal, which I still recommend if you're starting out on your weight loss journey. I started logging everything that I ate so I could see what I was actually eating. The day that I discovered that one Whopper from Burger King was nearly a third of all the calories I should be eating in a day, it was a very sad one for me. I love Whoppers, add cheese and mustard. But I love losing weight even more, so I gave them up. I then started learning how to cook, for real. I was terrible at it to begin with, no shock there. Everyone sucks the first time they try something new. The key is to keep going through the suckiness and come out the other side of it. Like our YouTube channel, Snail Racing. I cringe slightly when I watch our older videos because I had no idea what I was doing. Our first video was only a few minutes long, but it took me like 20 hours to edit it and create it. There was a lot of cussing and a lot of Googling. How do I make a transition to the next scene? How do I make the words scroll across the screen? Our thumbnails weren't catchy or even the right size. But I've probably spent around 500 hours editing videos at this point. And now I whiz around Adobe like a Premiere Pro. I watch other people's videos, and when I see something cool, I can figure out how they did it, and I can do it myself. It's very satisfying, but I wouldn't have gotten to this point if I hadn't kept going when it sucked. And it really sucked in the beginning. And so it was with my cooking. But I kept at it, and today I only look to recipes for inspiration. I don't need a step-by-step list of what ingredients and how much of them. I see what I've got in the kitchen to work with that day, and I make something up. A little of this, a little of that, and bam, restaurant quality meal. But that's today. 8 years ago, I threw out a lot of food because I burned it, or I put too much flour, salt, sugar, whatever in it, or it was just plain gross. The important thing was I kept trying. And making the switch from eating ultra-processed food to more healthy choices kept the weight falling off of me. It wasn't working out. I didn't do a darn bit of exercise. I did get a standing desk at work, but that was for my neck, not my butt. I continued to go home at night and drink way too much whiskey while playing video games, but I still lost weight. By choosing what food I brought into my house in the first place, and by living in a town without easy access to stupid food choices, I ended up losing 80 pounds. I watched in disbelief as my BMI fell from obese to overweight to normal for the first time in 20 years. The chronic heartburn? Gone. The bum knee that aggravated me all the time? Gone. An Australian was poking fun at me the other day saying, "You Americans hate the metric system so much you'd rather measure things in football fields." It's true, though. I'm a bowler, so I imagine that 80 pounds is 8 10-pound bowling balls that I was carrying around with me all the time. Can you imagine trying to walk while holding 8 bowling balls? No wonder my knee hurt. I know a woman who lost 100 pounds, and when I told her my bowling ball analogy, she said, "I always imagine carrying around 100 packages of ground beef." That seems even harder to carry, and yet so many of us are still doing it today. But if I could do it, you could do it. I'm not special in any way. I'm simply an imperfect human being who was tired of being overweight, tired of the body aches and pains that came with it. So I stayed focused, even though it took me 2.5 years to lose all 80 pounds. But it's been 6 years since then, and I haven't gained it back. I learned that I can eat whatever I want as long as I eat less of it. Just eat a piece of cake, not the whole cake. And I want to eat less of it because it doesn't take nearly as much food before I feel full now. I also started exercising a few years ago and have added some muscle, which is important for women over 40 because our muscle begins to disappear around that age, unless you work at keeping it. I used to be mad at myself for so many lost years that I could have been more active and not fat. But the past only exists in our minds, so there's really no point in dwelling on it. Don't feel guilty about what you did yesterday. Just do it right today. Don't just wish for it. Make a conscious decision to do it. And don't look back. I was overweight for 20 years before I took action. I dieted and failed repeatedly during those 20 years. Same thing with smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol. I didn't nail it on the first try when I tried to quit those things either. Or the second, or the third, for that matter. But I didn't give up, and I eventually made it. So can you. One night, shortly after losing all the weight, my husband and I had dinner with a friend and his wife. I hadn't seen them in several years, and I only found out later what had happened when we arrived that night. Our friend's wife had pulled him to the side and demanded to know if I was a new girlfriend because she didn't recognize me at all. When she realized it was still me, the first question out of her mouth was, of course, "How did you do it?" This is how I did it. I never gave up. If this is something you're struggling with and you want to make a change in your life, remember, you can do it. I believe in you. Peace. Join the Path of Most Resistance as a paid subscriber on Substack. This option will get you access to the community chat, along with a link to join the weekly challenge check-in calls, where I help you figure out how to get through the challenges you're facing in your own life. You'll also be able to access members-only posts, where I share the resources that have helped me conquer my own challenges. Want to push yourself even harder? I also do one-on-one coaching. Click the link in the show notes to book your free discovery call with me. Thanks for listening, and if you're enjoying the show, please share it with anyone else you think is up for a challenge.